Welcome to NAB's Client Insight series. Today we'll be talking about cybersecurity and fraud prevention. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting today. I would also like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Liz Huxley and I lead the transactional business for corporate. And today I'm joined by Tessa Bowles, who is a senior consultant in the security advisory and awareness team. Now more than ever, I'm hearing from you, our customers and the NAB team about the cybercrime landscape and how this topic is becoming a priority for all businesses. With the build up to the festive season, we're hearing more and more examples of breaches and fraud. This month alone, we've heard from customers experience direct debit fraud, where their bank account details were readily available in the public domain, so we supported them with steps to change their account structure. Business email compromise. We ran an updated one-on-one training session for their finance and accounts payables team to heighten their awareness on what to look for and introduce the essential 8 tips, which Tessa will talk more on later. We've also seen ransomware being used. Today is a bite-sized update on this topic. Our role as your bank is to support you navigate this risk with a preventative framework and tips you can adopt in your business. In addition to NAB support, there are government and advisory bodies supporting businesses with detailed policies and continuity plans. Before we cover the safeguards and prevention framework, Tessa will touch on the cost of this type of crime, who they are, and some of the latest threats impacting businesses. Given the short time frame of the session, please post any questions in the Q&A section below. If we have time, we'll address them. Otherwise, we'll respond to you directly following the session. Over to you, Tessa.
Excellent. Thanks, Liz, and welcome everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy days to come and learn a little bit about cybercrime and fraud. So what we're going to cover in the next half an hour probably isn't groundbreaking or new to you. In fact, many of you may have actually experienced some of the threats that we're going to talk to and take a closer look at, as we're now all online more than ever before, both at work and in our personal lives. So what is the cost, the current cost at the moment in Australia of cybercrime? So the Australian Cyber Security Centre, which is the government entity responsible for all things cyber, released their annual report in September, and they noted that Australians had lost $33 billion over the previous 12 months. There was a 15% increase in ransomware, and they actually received a report every 8 minutes, which equaled around 67,000 cybercrime reports over those 12 months. Now, it is likely that these numbers, both the 33 million and that 67,000, is likely to be underestimated because a lot of businesses who are impacted by cybercrime don't report it. PricewaterhouseCoopers also conducted a survey last year, which noted that over 50% of businesses had experienced a cyber attack. And the ACSC report is noting that they're increasing in their sophistication, severity and impact year on year. And the average loss per event is around $300,000 and involves a male over 40 who's university educated. So we're all vulnerable to cybercrime and we can all fall victim. The aim of today's session is to help drill down into what are some of the things the criminals are doing and what do they want us to do to aid them in the success of their crimes? What does that look like and what do we do when we come across it? It's also important to note that while we talk a lot about the financial impacts of cybercrime, there can be some other impacts as well. So that could be damage to your personal identity or reputation, or damage to the business identity and reputation, loss of business opportunities or employment, and last but certainly not least, the emotional or psychological impact or well-being of an individual who's involved in a cybercrime. Because a lot of the time when this occurs, it is simply really an accident and no one intends to become involved in these things. But we need to think of cybersecurity as not just IT's issue, it's a whole company issue. And certainly a lot of businesses have a lot of technical controls, so things like email gateways or blocking some access to some internet sites, and they're a great technical defense. but we always consider people being the first line of the human defense. And criminals in the last 5 or 10 years have been focusing more on that human element because they've figured out it's a lot easier to get us to do something rather than learn the skills they need to potentially hack into a system. So actually 85 to 90% of these crimes start through the very innocuous mechanism of emails. And any and all of us can be fooled by emails or SMS phishing messages. We're going to have a look at what they are like in just a moment. But we're all rushed and we're all tired at the moment. We're all trying to get through things quickly, and that's the perfect environment for the cyber criminals. But the way the cyber criminals are initiating contact with individuals is becoming more sophisticated. So how do we identify something as unusual or suspicious, and what do we do if we come across it? So again, these things we'll cover off today will make you and your business more prepared for how to respond when, rather than if, a cyber criminal targets you either at work or at home. So we're going to take a quick look at who are the cyber criminals. A lot of people, when they think of a cyber criminal, they'll come up with an image like this. The lone wolf tapping away at a computer in their parents' basement. That sort of view does allow us to distance ourselves and allows us to think, how does that one individual target me or find me in the world? Where in truth, we know they're run like a normal business. They will have structures, training schools, HR departments, etc. And they do this because it's profitable for them, and they'll continue to do it. And they're very highly organised and adaptable. They're always looking for ways to improve their skills on how to get more money or information out of us. They're organised and they're persistent and they're agile. So what does that look like? Email phishing. So when we use the term phishing, we're describing communications that look like they come from a legitimate organisation and they're looking to gather something from you. So phishing can occur via email, SMS, or on the phone. And they're looking to either get you to share some personal information. That might be your logon details for your banking account or for your email services or other services such as Apple or PayPal, etc. Or they're looking to trigger you to make a payment to a certain account, or trigger you to click on a link which will potentially deliver some malicious software onto your phone or computer. So we're going to start by having a look at what are the red flags of phishing messages and how we identify them and avoid being affected by them. But first off, we're going to have a quick look at some of the elements the criminals use to make these messages look legitimate. So for this example, and of course this could come from any service provider or any legitimate organisation the criminals can attempt to impersonate. And they can make their communications look really believable by doing such things as stealing branding. Of course, nab.com.au is online for everybody, but that also allows the criminals to steal our branding and pop it on their messages. In this example, it's reasonably well written. There are a few spelling and grammatical errors, but if you were to speed read it, you may not pick those up. And down the bottom here, we see 3 images and links, and they're taken from NAB's legitimate website, and they also will take you to NAB's legitimate website. If you were to click on any one of those tiles down the bottom, they would take you to nab.com.au, buying your first home. So the criminals can add little elements of legitimacy into these communications that help trick us into doing what they want. Now we're going to look through what are some of the indicators and red flags in this email that it's not a communications from NAB. Easiest way to do that is just going via top to bottom. So first off, we have the email address. So any communications from NAB, if you're speaking directly to your banker, the email handle will be their name at nab.com.au. Or if there's a team or a marketing update, it may come from an address which is at t.updates.nab.com.au. Certainly not required mailer that you see here. In this example, it's not personalised. So when you're receiving communications from an organisation that you're legitimately engaged in, they have your information and they should be personalising their communications. So things like, it should say, "Hi, Tessa." So if you see a hi customer or dear customer or just hi, another red flag that this isn't legitimate communications. In the financial industry phishing, we see the request for personal details a lot, or banking details. So always be aware or be concerned around an email that's asking for your personal information. That could be another red flag. And this one, you can see there's a bit of an urgency to the request. So the criminals will put in little elements that are designed to inspire the fight or flight response in you. So this one's saying, unless you give us all your personal information, you won't be able to access your online banking services. So if I'm the customer and I receive that, my first initial reaction is, oh, I need to continue banking online. Better click that link and fill in all my information. So again, having an emotional response to an email communication, or there's some sort of threat or urgency in there, is another red flag. There's a link to click on. Now, we certainly send customers links to click on. I'll show you a little bit more about that one in a moment. And in this one, there's no sign off. So again, if you're communicating with your banker, it will have their personal email signature. If it's a team within NAB, it should be the team details. And if it's marketing communications, it might have something as simple as a thanks NAB and our contact details. But certainly there will always be some sort of sign off. Now, going back to the link, so this looks like it's going to a nab.com.au site, but a little tip for you guys is if you hover your mouse over that link, it will actually show you where you'll be directed to if you were to click on that link. So tiny.ie is a website based in Ireland and nothing to do with NAB. Certainly not what this communications is trying to say it's coming from. So another tip, if you're not sure, just hover your mouse over those links and you can see the underlying website. And if it's got nothing to do with who the communications are pretending to come from, another indicator there. So just to wrap up from the top, double checking the sender's email address. Is it generically addressed or personalized to you? Is it requesting your personal information? There's a threat, or in some instances, less likely in financial phishing, there's a reward. There's a link and or a button to click on where the underlying website doesn't match, and there's no official sign off. Now, if I was convinced this was from NAB and I clicked on that link, it would take you to a site like this. So this is a phishing site that criminals have created. And if you bank with us personally, you'd recognize it as, unfortunately, a very good replica of our internet banking logon site. Again, easiest way to avoid this situation is either typing the web address directly into your browser up the top here, nab.com.au/IB, and then you know you're on the right site, or accessing your banking via an app, not via a link in an email or an SMS. Phishing doesn't just occur, of course, via email. SMS phishing is very popular. I've been receiving in the last couple of months lots that tell me I've got packages waiting to be delivered. If there's anything good about SMS phishing, it's that the underlying website can't be hidden. So this will be the site that I'll be taken to if I were to click on that link. Now, anything that is nab.com.au with a dot after it does not belong to us. And if you receive a message like this, if you could please send it off to fish@nab.com.au, or there's a mobile number there that's also available on the website, because we can get these sites taken offline, and then that way other people won't become potentially compromised. And I'd just like to highlight this situation here on the left. So we have 3 legitimate messages from NAB to our customer, Vicky. You can see it sort of follows the same format as those emails. So we're calling Vicky by name. There's a very simple sign off. We're not asking her to click on any links or the like. It's purely a status update. But then Vicky gets this final SMS down the bottom, which is verify your data. You know, your NAB account has been suspended. It's designed to inspire panic. Click here for re-verify your data. Doesn't sound quite right, and it's not. Now, what happens in this situation is our smartphones can be a little bit too smart for their own good, and criminals can use an online platform to send out these SMSs to thousands of individuals. And in doing so, they simply set the sender to be NAB. Now, if you have legitimate messages from us in a thread, when your phone receives the dodgy message, it goes, oh, I've already got messages from NAB over here. I'm going to add this message to that same thread of messages. So it's all in the one place for ease of use for the user. But unfortunately, this last one hasn't come from us. And a lot of people might go, well, how do they know I bank with NAB? They've said, you know, your NAB account has been suspended. The truth of the matter is they don't know that you bank with NAB until you click on that link and provide them all your NAB information. Again, if I didn't read that or didn't recognize it as a suspicious message and clicked into it, these are some of the pages that would display and some of the information that the criminals are looking to steal from you. So you can see in this instance, this is anything and everything that you would need to either access an individual's account or potentially apply for lending or services in that person's name. There is another option. We have seen the criminal enterprise break down recently in terms of the processes they undertake. It used to be one criminal gang would be responsible for phishing customers and then exploiting those individuals. Whereas what we're seeing now is one group may do the phishing aspect, and then they can bundle up that information and then sell on to other criminals. So the exchange of information for criminals takes place on the dark web. If you haven't heard of it, it's almost like an alternate internet that requires some specialized software to access, but it allows criminals to buy and sell whatever they need. So often groups who are stealing information are not the ones who are going to use that in future for misuse. And just to show you some examples, so there's 25 Australian passports for just under US 200 or 100 lots of Australians, name, address, date of birth, phone numbers, $2 each, just under $2 a pop. It's quite incredible. They can also sell information here that they have gathered from exploiting companies. So if they've been able to steal a company's information or data, this is an example of a crop and agriculture company in Canada. The criminals have been able to access all their information and extract that from their servers, and they're offering that for sale for competitors or interested parties. So you could imagine the damage that that could potentially cause a business if all their information is out there. So the other big threats that our customers are facing, and Liz mentioned this one in the intro, is business email compromise. So the aim of the criminals in this case is to access your business email for usually financial gain. And again, this is normally delivered via a phishing message, and it has the same indicators as that financial phishing email that we saw earlier. So the from email address is at Microsoft. There's a bit of a message designed to inspire a bit of panic, and they're asking you to click on a link and provide your information. So if I were to click on that link, here's an example of a Office 365 sign-in page looking to capture the business email and password. What the criminals will do if they are able to gain access to your account or your email account is they spend a bit of time in there trying to look for a monetary relationship, so supplier details or invoices or payroll. And they're looking to redirect funds into the bank accounts which are controlled by the cyber criminal. So the easiest way to avoid this, apart from recognizing suspicious messages and not clicking on links, is to enable what we would call multi-factor or second factor authentication. Now, you might not be familiar with the term, but you've probably experienced it. So when you log in to something, your first factor of authentication is your username and password. The second factor of authentication could be a code that you receive to your phone, which you then have to input into the system, which will allow you access. If you're able to enable multi-factor authentication, that means that even if someone does click on a link and provides their password, they won't be able to access their email without that code. And of course, adding, if there's the option to add any type of biometrics in there, so fingerprint, etc., that even makes it more secure. Now, having a look at business email compromise and invoice scams. So this is exactly what we were talking about before. A lot of the time, these can be targeted at our payroll teams, HR teams, but it can be anyone. So this situation, we have Julie who's looking at purchasing some property. She's been chatting to her solicitor, Barry, this morning, and Barry said, I'm going to send through the account details for you. Unbeknownst to Julie, Barry had received one of those phishing messages where he had input his email and his password, and the criminals were actually in his account and saw this email going out. So within a couple of minutes, Julie received a second email which said, whoops, sorry, those account details I sent you were incorrect. Here's the correct details to pay to. Now, of course, individuals do give out wrong account details or might change their where they bank. If you receive some sort of request to change account details, we recommend always ringing up that company, either on a number that you've got on file or that you've Googled and you can find yourself, not on a number that has come through on those communications, and just contacting that person and say, hey, I've received an email changing account details. Is this correct? And is this actually from you? The other big threat that we see in emails is what we call spear phishing. So we had a quick look at the phishing before, where it's not personalized. They send them out to thousands of people, so they're very general. Spear phishing is where it's quite targeted, so it may be addressed to you, it may actually also have something to do with your role, a connection to your role. If you receive invoices this way and you don't have any relationship with B. White at Schmidlson's, I would dare say have an ask around the office, is anyone actually engaged with these like this company, and are we expecting an invoice? If you do actually engage with B. White at Schmidlson's and they're sending you this and it's different to the way they would normally send you a remittance advice, again, spend about 30 seconds picking up the phone and calling them just to confirm that this has actually been sent from them. And the third threat we see facing businesses is ransomware. If you haven't heard of ransomware, it's usually delivered again via a link or an attachment in a message that someone's clicked on, and basically it encrypts all your files. If you try and open your files, they'll look like this, and you'll receive a pop-up which says your files have been locked and you need to pay a ransom. Ways to avoid these ones: not clicking on suspicious links again, and having a backup stored separately away from your main server means that if someone does click on a link and you are infected by ransomware, you can restore those files from your backup. And if anyone is ever affected by this, we recommend if you can close the window and disconnect from the internet as soon as possible, because of course encryption doesn't happen instantaneously. It needs a bit of time to work. So if you can disconnect from the internet, that will stop that process. Now, not all bad news, there's plenty of safeguards in place. Firstly, we recommend having a look at the Essential 8, which is a guidance document created by the Australian Cyber Security Centre, bit of a mouthful there. And there's 8 steps that you can pop in place that will increase your security defences. They have 3 different levels of advisory. So if you're a new business just starting out, they've got one for there, all the way up to large organisations. And always think of your cybersecurity defence as a layered approach. So what steps can you put in place in terms of technology, people and process that's going to make you a harder target for criminals? So even having awareness programs, so getting your team along to sessions like this, making sure everyone's aware of what suspicious messages look like, having really good password security, and having really strong processes which make sure you're verifying and validating new account numbers. You might have an agreed process for urgent payments for your executives, and making sure you're keeping business risk reviews or team meetings, having that item of cybersecurity on your agenda and keeping it front of mind. Having great passwords is also a really good way to protect your business. So we've spoken about how criminals can steal information maliciously, but there's another way your data might become exposed, and that's through a data breach. So a data breach is when you've given your information over to a legitimate organisation, and they haven't had the best security controls, and that information has been leaked. So we know criminals will definitely search these data breach sites looking for username and password information. I'm sure your password's not appearing here, but this information was collated from about 10 million data breaches, and these top 5 actually appeared in 5 million instances. So having unique and strong passwords, especially for your sensitive accounts like your banking, goes a long way to help you stay cyber secure. And if you've been affected by scams, so keep an eye on your accounts. If something occurs, please report it immediately. There's a couple of numbers there. And just to note that they can take a number of weeks to resolve. If you've received an email or an SMS and it looks like it's pretending to come from NAB, but you haven't clicked on it or anything, please send it off to that fish@nab.com.au email address, because our team has some skills in being able to take down those websites and not leave them up for other people to become exposed. And if you have an event, cyber.gov.au/report. So they have the reporting portal, but you can also reach out there. And if you require some extra assistance, the government can provide that in terms of getting your business back up and running. And if the incident is a reportable data breach, that needs to be reported through to the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner. Lots more information. So we've only had time today to just really touch on some of the top threats, but there's a whole range of more information, and we'll send some information out after the session as well. nab.com.au, lots of training articles. There's even a podcast there if you prefer to consume your information via listening. cyber.gov.au, which is the Australian Cyber Security Centre, or scamwatch.gov.au, which is more individual-based advice. Excellent. Thank you for coming along today.
Thank you, Tessa. Thanks everyone for your time. Today's session was a snapshot of what's happening in the environment and what we're seeing impacting all of our customers at the moment. It's a starting point to get you thinking and talking about how this might apply to you and your business. Please report incidents and share your knowledge and experience with others. We all can help combat cybercrime and fraud by reporting and talking about the topic. There will be a survey to complete at the end of the session today. We'll also be sending out a recording of today's session and a copy of the Cybersecurity Toolkit. Invites will be sent out in the new year for our next round of Insight sessions, so please keep an eye out for those. And wishing you all a happy and safe holiday season. Thank you.